Hello, and welcome to my computer science final project rundown, I guess you could call it. For my project, I decided to do just a drawing program. So basically the goal was to have a program where the user could just, make some marks, change their color, change their brush size, make some fun doodles if they wanted to. And then from there, I kind of expanded a little bit. I never intended really to have an undo function or really even I never really planned to have super customizable brush options or transparency or anything. But here we are. Let's run through the code, I guess, real quick before we actually start it up. This is our window. I've got it at 720p. I just think it's a good size for it. Works out pretty well. It's widescreen, but it's, smaller than usual. And then we've got this right here. These are all brush setup things. These values right here, just make sure that the sensitivity is okay when you adjust it yourself. And then this is the actual brush itself, the actual brush objects, give it a dummy position, right? Because the most challenging part of this project was getting mouse and keyboard input from SFML, which it doesn't sound like it would be so hard, but I had to go through quite a few tutorials, I guess, before I really got it working well the way that I wanted it to. Here's our window. So while it's open, this is how we get the brush to follow around. So right here, so we have the brush set position to this right here. We get the mouse position in terms of a vector, and then we set the position to that vector offset by the brush radius. If you're familiar with SFML, you might know that the circle basically, when you generate it, it doesn't come out from the point. It starts at the corner. So basically if you have a circle, in previous versions the circle would basically be down and to the right of where your mouse was, which was pretty annoying, so we have to get that offset in there. This right here is what allows the user to actually draw. So this right here, basically, if it's clicked, that's more mouse functionality right there. If the left mouse button is clicked, it will create a new mark, which is a circle, at the current brush radius. So it makes sure that the size is the right size. It sets the fill color to whatever the red, green, and blue values are, as well as the opacity. And then it sets the position to the current mouse position. And it adds it to the vector, right? So this gets displayed every time, and that's how you get all the marks there stored. These right here are all keyboard input, so this increases the brush size if you press up, down. So all these keyboard actions. This is opacity right here, more opaque, less opaque. This just clears the vector, so if you want to clean slate, you can hit R. If you want to change color, that's what all these are for right here. You notice they're probably pretty similar. Basically, if they hit 1, for example, they'll get white. The whole top row of numbers is just colors that they can get, and then if they hit 0, they'll get a custom color that they can put their own RGB values in. This right here is the undo function. I will admit it's a little bit janky. For some reason, I could not get it to clear the most recent mark just by size, but it's erasing the position of the beginning of the list plus the full size of the list. So for those of you good at math, that's the most recent one in the list. Not really sure why this is only working in this form, but I've tried pretty much everything. This is the only way I could get it to work. And then this is everything that gets drawn. So this is the loop that draws all the circles in the vector. This is the brush, and then this is the display. So without further ado, let's launch our program. We'll get it going. So right here, you can see the brush follows the mouse around. You can draw by clicking. It all works well. hit R to clear. This right here is just how we can see what's actually happening, right? And then we can change color. Notice the brush updates to the proper color. You can also, if you're feeling creative, you can draw and switch colors at the same time, so you get this nice rainbow effect, which I think is interesting. And brush size, right? So you see I'm hitting the arrow keys. I want this a little bit bigger. Let's draw ourselves a nice landscape. So we switch this to green. Maybe get this a little bit bigger so it's easier to draw. So we want to draw a tree, right? So let's find ourselves a nice brown. Back to green. Maybe a purple tree. Make it a little bit smaller. It's gonna be a purple palm tree. Get the vaporwave aesthetic. And we can also do opacity. So there's page up and page down correspond to opacity. So let's say we want some purple leaves on this bad boy. You might notice that the opacity, well, it's all tied to frame rate. The secret behind the way this is basically is that it's an uncapped frame rate, right? So everything, including the undo function, the drawing function, the opacity. The reason that if you click and hold in one place is that it's essentially just drawing a bunch of slightly lower opacity circles in the same spot, right? So eventually there are some problems with this, right? So I'll actually show you here. Let's turn the opacity up a little bit, right? If you get a lot of circles, basically, you start to slow down. I've managed to run into this problem only a few times because it really doesn't become an issue unless you're just intentionally, trying to get as many circles on there as possible. But you'll notice things are a lot smoother after we clear, right? And that's because it's just the larger the list, the longer it takes to go through each cycle and the longer your mouse moves between each frame, right? So let's show the undo function right now. Let's just draw ourselves some lines. Yep, okay. Got some lines going here. And if we hit Control and Z, you'll see it erases the most recent mark. So that's pretty straightforward. And that's essentially all there is. But I think it works about as well as I expected it to. In fact, even a little bit smoother. So mouse input and keyboard input challenges aside, I think it turned out well. I hope you agree.